Hi guys, Kim here at Olive City Homestead. The sun is in my eyes, so I think I'm gonna have to move, but today is the June garden tour. Oh, this is much better. Facing away from the sun under my shade umbrella. It is a very sunny morning. It's only about 9 a.m. It's already in the mid 80s and we're headed up to, I think, 95 today. If you notice anything a little weird about my voice, I have tried to edit out all the sniffles and coughs, but I actually have COVID right now. So this is day 3 for me, and I am feeling a lot better than I was yesterday and the day before. I basically get up early and do my chores. They take a lot longer, and then I collapse for the rest of the day. And we're getting through it. It's gonna be just fine. And the garden has changed a lot in some ways over the last month, and then in other ways, it's still just beginning, and that's okay. I just want to emphasize that for you, no matter where you are, whether you have a really short season and are just getting started because it's just starting to warm up, or whether, like me, you've had issues with birds and squirrels and have had to replant several times, so it looks like you're just getting started. That's okay. There's still plenty of time, and there's lots of crops that can grow and produce a lot of fruit and veggies for you in a short amount of time. Now let's take the veggie garden tour. So this bed, I have got zucchini growing and yellow squash. Yep, there's some. It's a little behind the zucchini over here. This is the first zucchini plant that's been fruiting. And yeah, there's zucchini on there I need to get off and do something with. I have harvested about 10 off of it so far. It looks like there's another 10 on it right now. Thyme is going to flower here. Such pretty, delicate lavender flowers. Oh, that smells very good. It smells like a spaghetti dinner is what it smells like. Another squash plant growing up there. I think that's a yellow crookneck too. So right next to the zucchini, yellow squash, and coreopsis bed, there's a ton of wild borage, which I did cut back a lot of it. I mean, it had blocked the entire pathway here, so I had to. Now this bed here, which last year was my pepper bed, was full of borage. And most of it had died back. I could have cut it back and let the new growth come up, but instead I cut it down to the base. It'll come up again next year for sure in the early spring. But meanwhile, I need to fill this bed because it's settled so much, and I'm going to transplant my peppers in here. Do need to pull out these walking onions, but I'll probably also take out the gazania there in the middle and put it somewhere else and give this bed a total refresh. Now, next to this bed, I have another bed with more squash because I love squash. There's also some gorgeous gladioli in here. I just absolutely love this color. It's kind of what I think of as a tangerine, but the center of it is yellow. To me, they look like just a gorgeous crepe paper garland in the middle of this squash bed. And yes, more zucchini and yellow squash. And on the very end here, I've got a bunch of cucumbers along this line, hoping they grow up this trellis here. Yeah, some of them are starting to. We'll help guide them. Those are Armenian, the really long cucumbers. Those are really the only ones I like nowadays. So, and this side of the same bed, Burgess buttercup here. You can see it vining. So it's good to know with your plants, are they vining or bush-like? So for instance, the zucchini and yellow squash aren't vining, but the Burgess buttercup is. Technically, I could lift this and train it to the trellis here, but I'm not going to, I don't think. You'll find out on the next tour maybe. You'll notice that in this bed, as well as some of the other beds, I have empty spots. And that's either because a plant like this Burgess buttercup didn't take off yet, and maybe it won't. I don't know. We'll give it another week or so and see. Or I intentionally left it empty because I did start a lot of new plants that I'm going to transplant into here. So I need to have some space to do that. I see we've got some volunteers coming up there. Those look like a combo. Some look like borage and a couple look like squash. Yeah, I'll have to pull those out. They're not in a good spot. Hello, random Mexican poppy. You look so sweet and innocent. But I know that if you stay there next year, you'll have spread to 20 feet. You are gorgeous, but These are such interesting bees with those stripes on both ends. Yep, I don't like the flower much, but the bees sure do. All right, and next to the empty, soon to be completely empty pepper bed that I'm going to fill up with good soil and compost is another bed. This one has more squash. Yes, yellow crookneck squash, 2 of them growing great here. Some dianthus, some agastache in the middle, some massively growing walking onions that I definitely need to take the tops off and replant. This is what they do, folks. And look, after it has sprouted, look, this one shot up another one that's about to sprout. Same with that one there. So yeah, these are looking really healthy, and I need to put them somewhere that I can enjoy them, because I don't want them to take over this bed. And you see that growing up there in the middle? That is a random potato, because 5 or 6 years ago, 6 I believe it was, I planted potatoes here. This was my very first garden bed, and even though I've never planted them again, I still get an occasional potato coming up. And then here I've got some red lunchbox snacking peppers. They produce a ton, super prolific, but they take a long time to start fruiting. I noticed that last year. Here along the fence line between the east bottom end of my garden and the olive orchard where the chickens live, I have some climbing runner beans. See, they're climbing up. Hopefully they'll all start doing that soon. Look at these. These are Painted Lady Improved. I love that. But even more, I think, I love the color. Let's see if I can find a good bloom here of these bush beans. Oh, here's one. I don't know if you can see the color there. Probably not. It's, oh, here's one. Let's see. It's a pale lavender. It's real pretty in person. But I can see that the red ones here are a little more dramatic. Look over here. So these are Kelvedon Marvel runner beans, and the blossoms on them are just incredible. Hoping to get a lot of beans out of them. This has been a real struggle. These beans have been eaten down by birds and squirrels many times. These were much taller, all of them. Look, you can see, eaten. But they're struggling, and if they can make it high enough, then they do all right. Also, I have replanted, so I have more growing, trying to protect them for a little while so they can reach that magic height. But I'm also going to reinforce the fence line as I've discovered how they're getting in, and hopefully prevent that. Or at least, to some degree. More here, and you can see right on the end how they've been munched. But I'm going to keep struggling with them. We'll see how they do. I've got some Fresno peppers here, and they are now starting to fruit, my first peppers. Got some volunteer tomatoes coming up because I did grow tomatoes here last year, and I'm not sure what kind they are, but we'll see. They're not cherries. I remember these were ones my dad had brought me, and he grows larger ones. And I have some calendula here and there. Another random tomato, but mostly this part in the front is empty because I'm going to transplant a bunch of pepper seedlings in here that I have growing now. Although I did get a random pepper here and there that came out, and we'll see if they survive. I ended up planting peppers here in these containers, and I have got some of them growing, some auroras, some Georgia flame. This is another aurora. What is this one? Oh, a blot pepper. And here are 2 Buena Mulatas. So once they get a little bigger, I'm going to probably take one of those out and put one there in the center. Hi, girls. Come on. So easy to make them happy. Just throw them a few handfuls of black oil sunflower seeds and some corn scratch, and wow, they're very content. Don't worry, they just get this once in a while. Usually they get nice healthy layer feed. But black oil sunflower seeds are actually very good for them too. Lots of protein in that. I'm starting to grow mealworms though, because they will absolutely love that and benefit from that. And I will do a video on that for those of you who are interested. Took me a few years to get up the nerve to want to do that, but now I'm going to. So next to the bed by the fence with all the runner beans, I've got this bed, which the squirrels completely ate all the squash plants and melon plants that I had planted here. Well, almost all of them. In the middle, I have Takane buckwheat, which I have growing another place. It's already in blossom. It's super pretty. Wait till I show you. But yeah, around the sides and right there in the middle, they just ate everything down to the ground, except there is one melon plant right there next to a random buckwheat that ended up down there. But I'm leaving all the sides empty because, as I've said, I have a bunch of seedlings coming up under tulle, protected from any critters and the birds, and they're going to go in here shortly. Next to this bed, I have my new bed, and I'll tell you what, the squirrels don't like my Moon and Stars Cherokee watermelon, and neither do the birds. They haven't touched any of these plants, which are now really taking off. Moon and Stars or Cherokee watermelon is kind of different. You can see all these yellow spots on the leaves. That's actually completely normal. In fact, that's how the melons look. The melons come out with one large yellow orangish circle, which is the moon, and then lots of little tiny ones, which are known as the stars. So yeah, the birds and squirrels didn't like them, but they did like all the other things I had in here, which were winter squash. So I've replanted 3 times, and I do now have some successful stuff coming up, but as you can see, some of them are still getting eaten. These haven't been eaten. These 2 are pumpkin, and these 2 down here are Amish pie squash. And then down the middle, I have recently planted some broomcorn sorghum, which is starting to come up in 2 rows. And that's going to be pretty. Apparently, the birds aren't into that either. And then just over here on the wall of my carport, which may eventually be a greenhouse, we'll see. I have got my dianthus on the end, and then I'm trying to grow some Christmas lima beans along here. I really need to extend the trellis with some wire down lower for the beans to catch onto. It's one of those things I've put off doing. I've had to replant here several times because of, well, either bug or bird damage, I'm not sure, but we're eventually going to get enough beans along here. I'm determined. And then I have some cornfield pumpkin, and these are dostal cucumber squash, which is not a cucumber. Don't know why it has that name, but they are a very different kind of squash that I had not tried before, so we're trying it. Okay, there we've got a geranium I need to deadhead, and some volunteer borage here on the edge, which I've taken a lot of it out, but I've left some. And in here I've got some kabocha squash coming up, and then more Christmas lima beans. Got a bunch of Christmas lima beans back here behind this, whatever this is, some sort of mint plant, maybe. Not mint, but like in the mint family, like, I don't know. I don't remember what this is. Anyway, there's obviously Christmas lima beans coming up behind it. So hopefully those are going to produce some beans for me, because I'm really wanting to try those for butter beans this winter. So outside my chicken run and the South Olive Orchard, I have a little herb garden, and here we've got lemon verbena starting to go to flower. But this plant, I've said before and I'll say it again, it is the best smelling plant I've ever smelled. I've started to propagate it and grow more. So it'll be popping up in other areas of my garden. It makes the best tea. I like it for iced tea. Yeah. That's a new herb I just put in. Oh my gosh, the name is escaping me. I'll put it on the screen when I can remember it. One of the things with COVID is brain fog. And I have some buckwheat growing behind it. I want to put some sunflowers back there too. Here we've got some sage. Isn't that pretty? It's doing really well here. It really does like filtered sun. It's just too hot here normally. I've got a bunch of oregano going to flower. And here is some lime thyme, which had started to self-spread, so I've taken a few bits and planted them in small pots here and there. And here, some winter savory. Pretty blossoms, still plenty of new growth. In fact, you can see new seedlings coming up that I can transplant if I'd like. And some echinacea, gonna be flowering soon. This is volunteer because I had planted some a couple of years ago and it just keeps coming up. And hello lady, she's hoping I'm gonna give her some of this sorrel. Chickens absolutely love sorrel. It's like the favorite thing to eat. So that's what I mostly use it for. It's also really good in stews I found in the winter. But I give it to the chickens. You can see where they've managed to get their beaks through and get hold of some of these leaves here and eat like half the leaf. Yeah, because they love it. Huh, ladies? So yes, we'll give them that little treat. This is also going to bloom. I had cut the blooms back a few times, but I'm going to let a few of them go to bloom because they're so pretty. Might try to collect some seed. See if I can reseed that because it hasn't self-seeded. Some more oregano. Now this is one I always let go to bloom because probably next tour, even in a week or two, you'll see. These are absolutely gorgeous violet flowers when this one blooms. Some basil, trying to also go to bloom. And lemon balm. All right, the bed everyone's been waiting for that I hinted about, my artichoke bed. So I've had this bed growing massive artichokes for 5 years. And last year, it was attacked by aphids and intense drought. It all died back, but then it grew back again. It had a fall crop, which was interesting. But I cut it all back. It came back this spring. Really strong. It looked great. I thought, oh, my problems are solved because, you know, I never had any issues with the artichoke before. I've had it for 5 years, never had any issue at all with aphids or anything. But yeah, last year it was devastated. I think because it was suffering so much from the heat, it left it weak, and that's why the aphids were able to attack it. But anyway, grew back this spring like it always does, no matter how much I cut it back, and it looked great. But then the aphids came, and then black flies came. I don't know, to eat the aphids or something, but it was like massive swarms of flies, and I could not handle that. I always say, grow what brings you joy, and that was not bringing me joy at all. So I cut those down, I pulled out huge rootstocks, and I planted tomatoes. These are Romas, and you can see, look, I have some Roma tomatoes already. Yeah, there's like 3 on here and several on the other plants too. However, about a month ago, something else I noticed, you know, in addition to the tomatoes, and that was artichoke coming back around the tomato plants. In fact, I had to pull one tomato plant out, not that one, but the one that was right here, because this massive artichoke plant just decided, no, we're going to grow here instead. I thought I pulled out every one, but these artichoke are resilient and they grow back. If there's any piece of their root down there in the ground, they just grow back. So I'm hoping they do better this time, because if the aphids come back or the flies come back, they're coming out of there. You know, mostly I grow the artichoke for the flowers because they're such huge, gorgeous purple flowers, and the bees love them. But nobody in my family except me likes to eat them. Got some cucumbers, Armenian cucumbers there, which for whatever reason, the ones right there didn't come up. So I've started some more seeds. I'm going to transplant some there. But yeah, I did get a hint though from Rooted Revival. Their channel is a fabulous, fun new channel. You need to go check it out. I mean, it's grown like crazy even though it's newer because it is so fun and entertaining and just it's really great. Go check them out. But anyway, in one of their recent videos, which I will link in the description below, they talked about using arugula as a companion plant for artichoke to keep aphids away. So I've got some arugula started and I'm going to be transferring it in here very soon, and we'll see if that works for the artichoke / tomato bed. And you know, I didn't know if I should get rid of the tomato plants, but I've decided they're going to have to coexist because that's just the way it is. May the best plant win, or they can learn to cohabitate nicely together. Okay, so next to these, I have my Chinese red long noodle beans, which are still very small, right? If you remember in the last garden tour, which by the way was in the end of April because I missed the end of May. Oh, there's a bigger one. Look, I have 1 or 2 bigger ones. Yeah, but most of them are small or non-existent. That's because the birds have eaten them all. The birds. I've seen the birds eating them. I've had them all covered with little cages like these are. See that new one coming up? But we've had such windy days that half the time I would come out and the cages will have been blown off because I didn't stake them or anything. Right, so yeah, I just keep replanting, and that's why some of them are really small. I just keep replanting. You know, I'm going to have a successive crop anyway. I am determined to get some red long noodle beans because they're so delicious. I absolutely love them, and I'm going to experiment growing them everywhere. And next year I'm going to grow them farther away from the olive orchard, even though, like I said, I've got some ideas about making that olive orchard fence more repellent with some tulle and other things to the squirrels. Here I've got a sun gold. You can see there's some tomatoes there. I've already been eating some. So I've got a few bush bean plants here, but they also have been being eaten. So I've got seedlings going that I'm going to transplant in here. Yeah, so tomatoes are one thing that nothing is bothered. I've got a lot of what are these? I think these are sweet 100s growing here, and they're doing super well. All of these are. There's like 5 plants here doing super well. Ooh, I see a tomato down there. See, there it is. However, these 2 on the end, what happened to you? I don't know. This one looked as scrawny and bad as that one, but now it's starting to fill out. So as I do with plants, I'll give you a few more days, maybe a week or 2, and if you don't come back and fill out and start looking great, you're out of here. Because I got plenty of volunteer tomato plants I can transplant in here. My red gladiolus, well, it bloomed earlier than anything else, and it's pretty much done. Having the gladioli, though, in the middle of the vegetable gardens just brightens everything up. Yeah. And on the other side of all these tomatoes, I have some corn. This is golden improved corn, and it's doing pretty well. There are some blank spots, but if you look closer, I've got new ones coming up. Because, you know, birds love corn seed, and it didn't seem to matter how many times I planted, they'd always get some. So again, I just keep replanting. There's some more coming up there. So that's good. I'll have successive corn. I'm hoping they do well. All right, and in this little square bed here, just kitty corner from the gladioli, cucumber, and Burgess buttercup squash, I've got a lovely purple lavender osteospermum, African daisy plant. These are absolutely great, and they'll just keep blooming and blooming as long as you keep deadheading. And I've left a little space in here for more, but I've got some yellow crookneck growing on this side, and over here I've got some vining butternut squash. It's actually buttercup, which is a smaller version of the butternut. Buttercup bush or something like that. I grew it last year, and it's nice. It's like a 1-person serving size. My locust tree has come back and looking beautiful. That was a rescue tree with no leaves last year, and it's doing really well. My lime tree It needs to be transplanted, but it does have a lot of fresh growth and a few limes on it, so I am happy about that. But yeah, I do need to get it out of here, transplant it into a bigger pot or the ground so it can do better. My stone flower bed along the steps has seen way better days. Look at all that oregano. I need to cut back purple scabiosa or pincushion flower. I love those. And they're such a sturdy plant, so resilient, and they just keep blooming and blooming and blooming. More oregano, which I've decided, like gazanias, they just self-seed everywhere, everywhere. Here I've got echinacea. Look, just blooming. This plant's doing really well. Hello, smoke bush. More echinacea by the chicken fence, and rhubarb growing, trying to grow anyway, despite the heat. It does like the filtered sun here, mostly shade. I think I'm going to take them out of the containers and plant them in a raised bed here by the fence. The squirrels don't seem to bother them at all. The birds peck a little bit at the leaves, but by and large they do okay from pest attack here. And they seem to like the microclimate, but I just think they're too constrained by the crate at this point now that they're getting larger. And my new raised bed that I put the tool around, it has worked. So the first time I planted it, the seedlings came up. They were all about this size. You can see now when the birds came in and ate every one of them down. When my kids and I took our 2-day trip, I came back and there wasn't one thing in here. So I put the tool up. I'll link that video if you want to see how easy that is to do. And now I've got plants everywhere, a bunch of sunflowers in rows along the back, and all different kinds of squash. I'm probably going to need to thin it out because I've got too many squash in there probably, but nothing's bothering them, and it's withheld against all the wind too, so I've been very pleased with it. All right, and in my upper garden on the west side, I have a lot of flowers, but I also have other things. So I've got a ton of mint growing here. This is spearmint. And I have a bunch of milkweed volunteering, which I pulled a lot of it out, but I've left some. All my cilantro that's gone to seed. Here's I think it's a Roma tomato. I have tomatoes everywhere. And some lemongrass I need to plant in the ground. Oh, here is that Tecane buckwheat in bloom. Now it's going to get much taller, but isn't that pretty? And there's a variety of things you can do with buckwheat, so when I get around to harvesting, I will share that with you. Oh, I've got my pumpkins coming out the top of these cages. I had planted these 3 times and squirrels ate them down. The squirrels really like the green leaves of squash, so they had ate down the pumpkins in this container several times, and so I've covered them, and that saved them, but now they're getting so big I'm gonna have to create a tall tool covered cage or move it, because right here this seems to be a spot the squirrels really like. Again, unless I can solidify that fence, which is one of my priorities. Got some beautiful purple something. Let me look at the bee. It's like, I don't know, like a mint or an agastache or something. I forget. More buckwheat, some snapdragons, and there's some agastache. Isn't that pretty? That's a coral. And some more snapdragons. Love that color. And some mums. Look at the mums. They're doing super well. And another beautiful mum. Amaranth, such a gorgeous maroon color. And wait till those blossoms come. They look like these amazing maroon dreadlocks. Love them. You know, something really likes the leaves of the amaranth this year. I've never had this happen before, but something has really been munching away. So I keep taking off the damaged ones. Hopefully they'll leave the new ones alone so it can be so pretty on top. And next to the amaranth, I have my black sapote chocolate pudding fruit tree, which is doing great. It's loving the heat and sending out lots of fresh growth, so I'm really happy with that. I have a bunch of zinnias that I've pinched back growing around it. And this thing that's probably a weed, but I'm not sure. So I'm keeping an eye on that. Rhubarb that really isn't liking as much sun as it's getting here, so I'm going to have to take it out and put it in the ground somewhere else and use this, fill it with more soil, and I think I'm going to transplant my Buddha's hand in the fall into this container. Not sure, because that citron tree is actually come back from the terrible cold of the winter. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll leave it where it is and just protect it better next winter, but definitely gonna take the rhubarb out though and put it somewhere that it will like more throughout this summer. The sweet bay leaf tree is doing wonderfully, as is the corkscrew willow tree next to it. Still need to transplant my honeysuckle plants. They are sending out new growth, and they are blooming and smell absolutely amazing, but they're just desperately wanting to get out of here and get planted somewhere in the ground where they can thrive. And I've got an arch that I'm going to build for them as soon as I'm over this COVID. And over here I've got asparagus, Martha Washington, and then I always say that it's Mary Washington. And then new purple passion asparagus and some volunteer zinnias. Oh look, I've got one starting to open. I think it's so interesting how they look when they first start to open compared to how they look a few days later. Here you can see some of the walking green onions I planted, and this is all new growth that has come up, as opposed to this old stalk that has the baby walking onions at the top. So I'm going to cut this old stalk off and just could replant that for a brand new plant. Meanwhile, the new growth will keep coming up to be used as green onions. See that going on here too. See, it's coming out of the same stalk. So you just cut the dead stalk off, and the new stalks of green onions come right out of the bulb that's under the soil. And in this cement block bed, I have walking onions all the way down, and I have berries. Ooh, that strawberry looks ready right there. I think I'm going to grab that as soon as this tour is over. And these two bushes are gooseberries. Just planted these a couple months ago, so I don't expect fruit this year from them. They're just getting established. And over here, I've left the middle empty so I can put other stuff in here when my new seedlings are big enough. And I have tomatoes. These are Sungolds, and they're doing really well. Some better than others. This one on the end is huge, but they're all doing relatively well, and I have already started getting fruit off of them. I see a nice orange one there. The Sungolds are my favorite. The canna lilies are looking fabulous. They haven't sent up any flower stalks yet, but I think they're going to. I also definitely need to divide them. Several of these squares have 3 or 4 instead of just 1 in them. So I will be dividing them later in the fall. But for now, they look great. And some walking green onions in little pots. And another version of Coreopsis. Some more Augustache getting ready to bloom. Look at this amaranth. First of all, you can see where something's been eating it. And it's very small, but look, it's starting to get its little blooms. This is my peanut butter tree. Lots of large new growth, so very happy about that. Definitely need to bring this one into the house or the greenhouse, the future greenhouse that I'm going to build in the winter, because of all the tropical trees I got, it liked the cold that we got, which was down into the upper 20s Fahrenheit, the least of all. It suffered the most. In fact, I had 2 and 1 died. This one has now come back, but you know, it took it so long to come back that it's not going to thrive and grow fruit unless I keep it happier during the winter. Here we've got some Augustache in bloom. Beautiful purple. And behind the Augustache, there is some more amaranth growing. And Batman the duck preening himself. And there we have some lovely dahlias. And here are all those seedlings I was talking about. I've got delicata squash and red roselle hibiscus, and I've got lemon squash and butterbush squash, and I have some eggplant that I can't pronounce. It's a very long name. I've never grown that eggplant before. And then kabocha squash and kajari melons And what else? Some green nutmeg melon, more delicata. Back there I have some noir de car melon. That's an okra, the only one that's come up in there. And that's a peppercini. I planted a bunch in here, only one's come up. And none of the peppers I planted in here have come up. Very interesting. I know peppers like heat, but I've got peppers coming up in other places. This is calendula coming up. So far, only 2 have come up. Amish pie squash coming up strong. More lemon squash, emerald gem melon. And I just planted some more burlado bush beans in there, so they haven't come up yet. So these are the transplants that in another week or 2 are going to go out in all those empty spots in the beds. I let that random ruby lettuce volunteer go to seed. I'm going to collect the seed and plant it in the fall. Meanwhile, I really like the yellow blossoms on top of the maroon stalks. It is right in the middle of my pathway, but so is the alyssum. And the other alyssum. Oh, I gotta get up that zucchini. And more alyssum. And chamomile that's trying to go. And look here. Volunteer, you know what it is? Next to volunteer oregano, it is a volunteer tomatillo. I have a few of those. And it's going to grow really well right there, so I'm just going to let it. It's right near my squash bed here. And it's not really in the middle of the pathway. The lettuce is in the middle of the pathway. There's enough room on both sides to get by. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you're all healthy where you are and that you are enjoying your garden, your fruit orchards, your beautiful life as much as I am. And remember, you can make that life whatever you want it to be. You can create the life you want and the garden you want. So why not start right now? See you next time, folks.